The SDGs are nothing less than a blueprint for a better world, a roadmap to get from the world we have to the world we want to have. It's a bumpy road, but it's a vital journey, and we will all be held to account in 2030 for what we have achieved collectively and individually. This is a time for action. Our first responsibility is to understand that reality is determined by what we do, not by what we talk about doing. The objective then of this session is to ask this question: how should governments organize themselves to take concrete actions that are effective, inclusive, and accountable when it comes to delivering on the SDGs? We know that governments, as they cope with the SDGs, will have to work across policy areas because the breadth of Agenda 2030 is huge. We know there will be difficult trade-offs.
Getting governments organized to deliver on the SDGs is going to be absolutely essential in implementing the 2030 Agenda. At the end of the day, it is about governments delivering on services, but delivering major promises to people. Governments that can and will and should mobilize all actors around the SDGs, governments that ensure that institutions are effective, accountable, and inclusive. This is all reflected in Goal 16, and those of you in the room who participated across the divides in making this happen know that it is critical for every single one of the goals. Various government institutions need to come together to develop and implement integrated policies. That's going to probably be the most difficult. When the center of government functions effectively, we see that collective expertise from across the public sector can be mobilized and brought to bear. I met a few countries where the committees are led and coordinated by the Prime Minister or the President's office. This is very powerful. So in short, the depth and ambition of the SDGs really do call for a concerted and coordinated effort of the entire political world, as well as civil society and the private sector. And everyone has got a job to do.
President Peña Nieto decided that the implementation of the 2030 Agenda should be led and supervised by his own office. And this was basically because of two reasons. First, our permanent dialogue with multiple stakeholders, including state governments and all of government agencies. And second is that the Office of the President is also used to having this multisectoral view of the entire public administration. And the other instrument that the President decided to have was to install a National Council of the 2030 Agenda. It is headed by him, and it has multi-sectoral participation, including 32 state governments, 20 federal agencies, international agencies that work in Mexico, universities, and other civil society organizations. And this council, headed by the President, sends a clear signal of the importance of the SDGs to the government, and it also a way to guarantee that the implementation goes well beyond our current administration. As an innovative approach that we would suggest helps also with these governance issues is that after establishing the National Council of the 2030 Agenda, we have directed now our efforts towards boosting subnational governments' involvement and ownership of the SDGs, so they can deliver the best way possible. SDGs should not be something additional to government. It should be at the heart and core of government responsibilities.
I would like to mention just a couple of approaches from this strategy that I would see as innovative. First of all, the targets there, and that's similar to the SDGs, are formulated cross-sectorally, and that is very important in order to bring the ministries and somehow avoid the power struggle that exists among them quite often. Why Prime Minister's office is especially favorable as SDGs leader in SDGs implementation is because I say sometimes, for some reason, other ministries respect us as mediators. It's because the Prime Minister's office, usually, we don't have our own portfolio. We don't have the agenda that we would defend, and we act more as negotiators, mediators, or people who support with our own expertise the ministries. That is very important.
In Paraguay, the 2030 Agenda is backed by a very deep process of participation, citizen participation. For 13 months, from November 2013 to December 2014, we engaged in creating a country vision and we engage farmers, youth, women, industrial workers, indigenous people, to come up with a country vision for 2030 with the strategies. And we call this the Paraguay 2030 agenda. That was before the SDG was crafted. But then when we compare that agenda with the SDG, we realized that was 92% aligned with the targets. Given that coincidence between the local agenda and the global agenda, having a whole government approach is much easier. So we started to build a national budget based on results from our National Development Plan. And now this traceability of all dollars spent from the different outputs each public institution is producing, and how those outputs contribute to some of the targets of the SDGs or to our National Development Plan. We also created a forum that we called the National Team for the Country Strategy, comprised by people coming from the productive sector, from the social sector, from academics and cultural sector, who have the mandate to pursue the implementation agenda and to be the brokers between different administrations.
With the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals, the government of Kenya formed a cabinet committee, and it created a designated interministerial working group that is coordinated by the Ministry of Planning. We are finding linking policy, planning, and budgeting quite problematic. We find that weak budgetary performance has been a challenge, and one source of poor budgetary performance is found in the weak links between policy making, planning, and budgeting. Because we do believe at this stage in the public service or public sector, peer-to-peer experiences in terms of sharing experiences, knowledge, and innovation require a forum where they can freely talk about the politics of the public service. They can be able to share experiences of what works, what doesn't work, and we are very happy to share our learning.
Et nous ne voulons pas que les ODD passent des côtés et l'Afrique des côtés.
I was appointed as the SDG coordinator without 3 Ps, the famous 3 Ps, and no power, no people, and no pennies. So I copied the same system, so I called upon all the ministries, they appointed focal points, and I said, well, here's the list of targets, so you should add your powers, your people, and your pennies. And so they did. We thought, and also they said, no, well, let's not have any consultation. That's so old-fashioned, consultation. And perhaps participation, but that sounded already a little bit old-fashioned. So I said, okay, then you do the work. And so I said, you each got 10 pages. The following groups, who are quite good organized in the Netherlands: the group of youth, young people, group of knowledge institutions, local authorities, business and finance, and whom did I forget? Oh, the ministries.
There is a need for dialogue on this issue within Africa between the Agenda 2063 and the SDGs, because on the continent, the African Union tells its member states, you implement the SDGs through Agenda 2063. So then what you are going to find at country level is that the UN, people who are in the UN sector, they will be talking SDGs, and those who are in the African Union will be talking Agenda 2063. So there's really a need, and you are going to have a problem at country level on how you harmonize and you build this national mechanism for the implementation of the SDGs.
I believe that the OECD can play a key role in helping governments to implement Agenda 2030. You have a unique tool and experience to help governments, and we will need your help in these in this process. Going forward, we have a formidable task to develop efficient methods for governance to reach the goals of the agenda. And we have learned some lessons since we started this process. Firstly, a whole of government approach is essential. And this means that all ministries must be responsible for implementation. Secondly, public partnership with both private sector and the civil society are crucial. And we have a long tradition in our country of collaboration between the different sectors of society, but this is not enough. If we want to reach these goals, we have to develop new forms of cooperation between the public sector and private sector, between the public sector and the civil society. And lastly, in order to achieve governance, coherence, and coordination, mainstreaming tools are necessary. And this is also a very interesting part, that we have to integrate all the different parts of this agenda.
We need to react to the fact that the world around us has changed. We have institutions that were developing over many centuries, and they were trained to respond to a different type of problems. So currently we have very often institutions that have a very complex top-down hierarchy, and they may be very effective at solving simple questions. However, they won't be very effective at solving complex questions.